This is Pranav Goa Thakurta from Edu TV. Today, in such a wonderful, auspicious day, the Teachers' Day, which is celebrated in India in a very big way, as out here, Guru is the most respected person. And we have got one of the most famous Guru with us, Professor Pant, who had been Pro Vice Chancellor of IGNU. He's taught in many IITs. He's taught abroad also, in US. So welcome.
Firstly, greetings to everybody on Teachers' Day. And we've seen in the last few months that teachers have done a tremendous job of managing the things without any notice, without any preparation, without any training. I mean, just one evening it was said from tomorrow there will be no schools, but teachers insisted that there will be learning, there will be events, there were social events, cultural events, all kinds of things were happening. And that is really amazing. I also want to say to teachers, and you may not believe me today, but teachers will be the most important element in society in the coming decade. And I will tell you why I say so. There are broadly three reasons. First is that teachers are first learners who create other learners. And in this thing, they have demonstrated that very elderly people who had never done any of these things before were all doing Zoom meetings or WebEx or Google Meet or Microsoft Team or whatever. So there's a whole range of things that they were doing. And they were doing very effective teaching, not just the holding of the meeting as what a bureaucrat would do. The other important reason, now what is going to happen is in future, everybody will have to be a learner. And therefore, teachers will be there. The second important aspect which we often forget, and I say this very often, the difference between an expert and a teacher is that an expert can demonstrate his or her expertise, but a teacher can make an expert out of an ignorant person by first making that a knowledgeable person. So as long as you have teachers, you can keep on creating experts. And that is why very often people say that the teaching profession is the mother of all other professions. But finally, most important is that we look at teachers only as preparing for board exam or IIT or something, but teachers are shaping minds. And this is the most important part, that in future, we are going to have the mindset of people, which is going to be most crucial. And the only people who do that are teachers, supplemented by parents, your elders, families, whatever. But forming that mindset is very important. And that is why people used to go in search of good institutions, because the kind of mindset you would have there would become completely different. So anyway, coming to the topic that I want to talk about, I want to talk about the paradigm shift in education. Or in simple language, how learning in future will be different from learning in the past. Learning in the past was about rote memorization. So how much could you remember? And as I often said, the exam was about, can you write in the answer book without looking at the textbook? So can you write what is given in the book without looking at the book? And memory was very important. So for example, people of my generation, I can still tell you that pi is 3.141599265, log pi is 0.4972, square root 2 is 1.414, square root 3 is 1.732, and any number of formulas and equations and quotations from literature. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of wisdom. So whatever, but that was the hallmark of a good education, that you remembered, and you remembered it almost all your life. Today, that is no longer important. Because by the time I tell you pi is 3.14159, you can go to your mobile and get it to 33 different places. Now you say, okay, so I know pi up to 33 places, so what? So now we are coming to the next stage as to what do you do with what you know. And this is why I call it a paradigm shift. I want to begin with a story of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a professor of physics at Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton in the US. And this story is about 115 years ago. So as happens in university exams, and you imagine these are times before computerization, automation, and so on. So he wrote a question paper, gave it to his teaching assistants. Now, most professors have a teaching assistant whose job is to do all the routine part of conducting the exam and collecting the answer books and getting them graded and so on and so forth. And you might be knowing many bright Indian students actually get this teaching assistantship to fund their studies when they are in a university abroad. So Einstein gave this question paper to his teaching assistant. The teaching assistant obviously knows the subject, so he looks at the paper, and Einstein was getting to be about 60 years or so, and he thought Einstein is getting forgetful. He tells Einstein, but sir, this is exactly the same question paper you gave exactly to the same students last year. How can you do that? And Einstein smiled at him and said, you are right. The questions are the same, but the answers have changed. This is the challenge to education. The challenge to education is the questions are still the same. What do we teach? How do we teach? Where do we teach? How do we assess us? Who will teach? All those questions are exactly the same. But as you have seen in the last 6 months, the answers have changed. And this is what I mean by paradigm shift. So paradigm shift actually is the name which was given by Thomas Kuhn. It's a very well-known famous book, The Nature of Scientific Revolutions. And Thomas Kuhn for the first time said, we often believe that science progresses in accumulation of more and more knowledge. So we didn't know something, then we learned something, and it was a continuous accumulation of knowledge. It's like a heap or a pile of knowledge that becomes scientific knowledge. But Kuhn said, no, this is not so. The knowledge is there, but the framework in which we interpret that knowledge, in which we organize that knowledge, in which we understand that knowledge keeps changing from time to time. And this is what he called paradigm shifts. 3 examples which are very well known of paradigm shifts, which I will talk, and then I'll come to my own thing about the learning thing. The most well known paradigm shift is what is called the Copernican revolution. From time immemorial, it was obvious that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. And therefore, we assume that the earth is fixed and the sun keeps going and coming back and so on and so forth. We teach in school, sun rises in the east and sets in the west and so on and so forth. And there was a whole, in the Greek thing, it is the Ptolemy method. In India, it is all this astrological method that we cast your horoscope, etc. They were all on what is called geocentric system. But when you looked at geocentric systems, some of the things became very complex. There were cycles and epicycles, and here astrologers made a great killing by saying, ab Guru Vakri ho gaya hai, ab Shani Vakri ho gaya hai, and Vakri means going in the opposite direction, retrograde in English. Now the planets don't change their way of going, but it was enough to scare people that now Guru has become Vakri, this will happen. Even in TV, this will come every time, that now that this has happened, what is going to happen? Then it was Copernicus, and then Kepler and so on, who looked and said, if we keep sun at the center, then everything becomes nice elliptic orbit. Sun is at the center, Earth is number 3 planetary system, then is number 4, Earth, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. Everything looked very nice. This was called a paradigm shift. Similarly, we had this idea that God created all of us. So God created man, God created goat, God created sheep, God created monkey, God created flowers, God created viruses, God created everything. But Darwin said, no, actually we are all coming from the same thing. We are part of an evolutionary process. Billions of years ago, we were no different from the chimpanzees. We were probably part of a lizard, part of this, reptiles evolved and so on and so forth. The history of evolution is so long. And this was another big shift called the survival of the fittest and the theory of evolution. Another third very important shift was by a person who talked about the, you see, we see the earth as solid, we call it Terra Firma, earth is solid. And this fellow is Alfred Wegener. He said that, no, earth is a series of plates which are moving around, and he had the theory of tectonic plates, which gives rise to explanation of why we have earthquakes, etc. And now those people who live in Delhi, Gurgaon, observe earthquakes ever so often. In other parts of the world, there are earthquakes. The whole earthquake thing was a question of that earth is not solid. We thought it is a solid mass of matter and so on. No, it is a set of floating plates on a molten inert thing. And this is another example of a paradigm shift. So why I'm talking about this is that when we look at education, we must understand that education is now about to change. And the phrase that I use to describe that change is called learning 3-2-1. And I use this learning 3-1 because you will hear so many people talking about education in the 21st century. As if for 100 years, the education will remain the same. The education of 1900 was not the education of 1999, right? And therefore, I'm saying, let us look at one decade. If we look at 10 years and say now children who are entering school, by the time they leave high school, how much the world would have changed, and are we preparing them for that? So I am talking about learning 3-2-1. And so what are the changes that are going to happen? And I must share with you that very big changes will happen. You look at the changes that have happened between 2000 and 2010, between 2010 and 2020. There's a very classic picture that you see that in 10 years ago or so, to take a good photograph from the top, you would have to go on a helicopter. There would be a helicopter, there would be a pilot, then there would be a photographer. He would have a high quality camera, and from that he will take a picture which was an aerial picture. Today what happens? All this is gone. There is a drone. It has cameras. It has this thing. It even will have AI to interpret the thing, and some boy with an app will be controlling the drone. This is the kind of change that we are seeing. I can go on and on. I don't want to spend too much time, but what I want to say, this is a time of rapid change. And therefore, the model of education that we have, and the model of education is centuries old. This is the model of education which is about several hundred years and has not changed. In no other field has this happened. You look at a hospital today and a hospital of 100 years ago, you see it completely different, unrecognizable by a doctor of 100 years ago. But the classroom is still more or less the same. There's one more projector there, there is one more computer there, but otherwise the classroom is completely almost unchanged. Similarly, the method of teaching, the method of assessment, and so on. So what we are looking at, and this is not I am saying for the first time, those of you who have been following Sugato Mitra, he talked about how children learn by themselves, the hole in the wall experiment, then the cloud thing, and he did this all over. He began with Kalkaji Islam in Delhi, but did it in Africa, did it in England, did it in so many places. He is a professor from Newcastle, and he's got a TED scholarship to do some of these things. He found that children can learn by themselves. And this is very important. All children of all age are able to learn their mother tongue without having to be taught the mother tongue. The second language may take them 12 years, they may still not know it. But the mother tongue, whether it's English, Hindi, Swahili, Japanese, they will learn it. Now, this is exactly the point. The point is that children are great self-learners. But as we take them through school, by putting certain mandatory things which have no correlation with their ability to learn or their desire to learn. So one of the things that we have to do is to encourage children to continue to be self-learners. And today now, with the resources available on the internet, with this kind of a thing and various aspects, it is much more possible to do. That doesn't mean that we don't need elders to guide them. So we need their parents, we need their uncles and aunts, we need their elder brothers and teachers to help them learn whatever they are wishing to learn or what you wish them to learn. But you don't teach them with a blackboard and chalk and put 40 children in a class and try to do that. You look at each person along that thing. So this is one of the very important things. The other important thing that is going to happen is, and I have to emphasize this, we are in the age of artificial intelligence. There is no point in being like an ostrich and burying your head below and say that no, AI will not affect us. It is as if we had thought at one time in India that the coronavirus will not affect us or something else will not affect us. This won't happen. So it is very important that all educators become familiar with artificial intelligence and be able to use it for their thing. They did use e-learning and so on, but this is one step more, and it is something which, of course, everyone. The other important aspect is that even instead of calling them classrooms where the teacher is in charge and in authority, let us make them co-learning spaces where they are all learning together, and we are talking of a community of people who are learning. And I'm saying this not as just imaginary thing, but as the result of a recent book by Anthony Seldon. By recent, I mean 2 years ago, 2018, Anthony Seldon published a book called The Fourth Education Revolution. And Anthony Seldon is a very interesting person. He is a vice chancellor of Buckingham University, which is not known like Oxford, Cambridge, but is considered the modern university of UK. He was also in charge of a school, the Wellington School in UK. So Eton and Wellington are the two well-known schools in UK. And he says that now with AI and machine learning, Eton education will be available to any child anywhere. And this is the important part. Today, in education, we have a bell curve. Some people will do very well, others will fall behind, and so on. But the promise, the paradigm shift is that everybody who wants to learn will be able to learn. It may take different amount of time, it may take different effort, it may take different trajectories, but they will do it. The other thing is that they need not overload themselves with stuff that is not needed, because they will always be able to get what is called just-in-time learning. And finally, in the initial remarks, I want to say, and it is a very exciting time for all teachers, we are coming to an age where we are going to see the emergence of the science of learning. Today, learning is an art. We say he's a good teacher, he's a good performer, he teaches very well. But it is more a question of human effort and something which you might call an art. But things change. Medicine was like this 100 years ago. There's a very interesting book by, I think, Lewis on the youngest science, where he's trying to say that medicine is one of the youngest science. And as you know, much of the things about medicine came to be not only within about 100 years or so. And DNA is just about 50 years. Even the knowledge about many of the things is very, very recent. So what we are going to see is that how does the brain actually work? See, we are dealing with the most important thing of a human being. That's why I said teachers are going to be most important, because they shape minds. And training the brain is today also the most challenging job. What we have been doing is what we might call trial and error model of learning. So we have all these theories of learning, constructivism and behaviorism and so on, but we don't know what's going on inside the brain. Do we know what is the difference inside the brain of a person who knows Pythagoras theorem and one who doesn't, or one who knows integral calculus and one who doesn't? So this is where a lot of things are going to happen, because neuroscience is now coming to become a part of education. So when we look at what is called magnetic resonance imaging, and especially functional magnetic resonance imaging, we know which part of the brain is working for which kind of activity. More and more detailed maps of this are becoming available, and therefore people who have difficulties or challenges in learning, you will be able to identify exactly what is the barrier to learning and therefore be able to do something about it. So in some sense, this is a very interesting time for educators, and a fundamental change is going to happen. Those educators who will take the lead in learning about this and adapting this will be found to be actually leaders in that field. So with this, I will finish my kind of introductory remarks. Over to you, Pranav.
So there is a question from Madam Anupama Ramachandra. She's the principal of Delhi Public School,
Bangalore.
How prepared are we as a nation to handle this paradigm shift? This
Very simple. How prepared were we to handle the coronavirus COVID-19? How prepared were we to this? So the point is, the challenge is there. You can either respond to it or give up. We are obviously not prepared because we didn't know about all these things in advance. So it's only last 2 years. In 2016, in the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab talked about the fourth industrial age and the age of artificial intelligence. 2018, Anthony Seldon talks about AI in education. So we need to prepare ourselves, and this is what the important point is about the time. Today, we prepare ourselves as we go about doing our business. So we do not say we prepare separately and then go out and do this thing. We prepare while we are working, and this change will happen by the set of people who will lead the change.
We have a question from Mr. Pramod Mahajan. He will speak himself so that we can see his emotions also. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
really?
Sir, like all in a whole, that experiment is, it has an established fact in the world that with minimum intervention, the child learns better.
Yeah.
Now it's the age of AI and the machine learning and all. So don't you feel, sir, we should frame the curriculum in such a manner that in which we don't teach what the child know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
So you,
if
so this is exactly.
we have to teach what which they are not knowing. We have to ask those questions which are not answered yet. So
Also,
then something I think fruitful. Otherwise,
yeah, no,
what they know.
you have actually caught the point. In fact, all research shows that learning is most interesting when it is at the threshold of what you know and you don't know.
Don't know.
And therefore, that becomes exciting. If you keep on saying what he knows, he is bored. If you give things which is too challenging, he cannot do it. That exactly, this is what neuroscience tells us, that our brain gets most excited. You know that when you're trying to solve a problem, trying to get a puzzle, you got 80% right. Now you want to get full right so that you get the reward. That's why games are so interesting. That's why PUBG is so interesting. Because you are just at this thing, you have done so much, and you want to do a little more to get the achievement. If we start looking at that, and this is where you have rightly said, the power of AI is it will be able to know what you know, how much you know, and where you don't know.
Correct.
Now, Vygotsky, etc., talked of scaffolding at one level, but this is, and I'm very happy. So the question that people were asking, are you ready? If Pramod Mahajan can think like this, we are ready. All that you need to do is say, this is what we want to do. There are enough people knowing AI and technology and everything to make it happen. So you don't have to learn that, but you have to identify. And I think this is a very important thing which has been identified, that the learning intervention or learning experience must be personalized to the situation of the learner, so that he is just feeling excited that now he's learning something more beyond what he already knew.
Yeah, very, very rightly said, sir. And then he can implement also in the new situation, in the unknown situation.
I think we have to get into the habit of saying he or she.
Yeah.
There's one more question. I think from Anupama ma'am only. And Anupama ma'am sitting out here is a Fulbright scholar. Am I correct, ma'am? So the question is, as an educational administrator, how can we prepare the stakeholders for this change?
See, it is very simple. There are two basic drivers. One is fear and one is greed. So either you have to tell them that your child will be good for nothing. He will be like these landless laborers which are going on the streets with nobody to take care of them, waiting for Modi ji to give them one plate rice and two chammas dal, whatever. The greed is you will become like Steve Jobs, you will become like Jeff Bezos, you will become like Mark and Jeff Zuckerberg, and so on. And this is actually the truth. In fact, even in India, everybody who went to engineering was not for the love of engineering. They went to engineering because they thought there would be good careers in engineering. People who went for MBA went because there would be good careers in MBA. Not they wanted to manage a business. With their own money, they put in fixed deposit. They don't run business. So the point is very simple. And this has been always so. In 1970s, US found that all students who were studying hard subjects like physics and maths and engineering technology were coming from India, China, Japan, and so on. And the American children were not studying these hard subjects because they could lead a very good life without having to study hard. And I know because I was contacted for some of these things. They said, so will all future development depend only upon the poor of the world? And then I was asked to suggest methods whereby we could get affluent people also interested in science, like what we were talking to Pramod Mahajan, that make them curious, make them interested, not just because of the job opportunities, because they would want to do. And that is why you have seen that this generation of people that we talk about as the innovators, the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates and the Mark and these things came about out of that, because people said that we don't have to just train them to get a job. We have to get them excited about doing new things. And I think this can happen very well. So the excitement, and Mr. Mahajan already said that if children are excited about doing something, they will do that. Today, what had happened in the past, we were told conformity. अरे इस सबसे कुछ नहीं होगा, नौकरी मिलेगी कि नहीं. So you had to comply to the requirement of the job. Now we are saying that even if you don't get a job, you may do things which are valued by society. Now we are talking about creative, innovative knowledge economy. So this is the basic idea.
Sir, we have got one more question from Dr. Deepika Sharma. She's the principal of Grand Columbus School, Faridabad, Haryana. The question is, the education system has been rebooted, but its effectiveness is far from the outcome required. How can it be more credible and include all the stakeholders?
See, the first, I have said this several times when we talked about national education policy, that we should not get carried away by what the government is doing. We have to look at what is our interest. So I have this thing which I said very often. So when people ask me, what do you do? So I say, I work in the FMGC space. I said, what is FMGC? They've heard FMCG. FMCG, everybody knows, fast moving consumer goods. So they said, but what is FMCG? Have you mixed up? Do you mean FMCG? I said, no, I mean FMGC. So what is FMGC? I said, FMGC is for my grandchildren. So if I'm looking at education for my grandchildren or your nephews and nieces and so on, or you're looking for your children, grandchildren, you will have a different approach than government. Government works on compliance. No rule should be broken. I should not go to prison. My pension should not be stopped. I should not be given any penalty. And now, you know, they're talking compulsory retirement for government servants above the age of 50. So government servants' idea is to just protect himself. The government's idea is to protect itself. But when you're looking at the things about learners, you have to look after. You are the parent. You are the grandparent. You have to take. So don't have to fight with the government. Whenever the government says anything, it doesn't say don't do anything more. So government says this is what you need to do to get a certificate from CBSE for class 10+2. You do that. But the rest of your time, you can learn anything you want. And even that thing, you need not just memorize, you can understand and also recall. So the point is, the error is that we have chosen the CBSE or the IIT JEE as the final goal. It is just an intermediate situation. And even CBSE will turn around. He said, when did I say don't learn anything more? When did I say don't learn to learn? When did I say don't become a self-learner? When did I say go to Akash Institute for getting coaching for my this thing, or go to some coaching for a board exam? I simply said, this is my question paper. It's a 3-hour exam. At the end of so many years of schooling, if you do this, you will get this marks. But I just said, don't learn anything else. And this is exactly the point. I don't know where parents got to this idea, or teachers, school, that all we have to do is to do the CBSE syllabus. And this is the answer to the question. And when you see the benefits of this, and we are already seeing a few examples here and there of children who ventured out and learned more. They made some apps, they made some website, they made something. People are talking about those as positive things. So for a long time, we have been under this standard model that this is the only way. But today we know that that is not the way. In fact, many companies now don't look at your degree. They have said that we don't care for your degree. We are looking at what your ability, and that also overall abilities, not your marks in physics, chemistry, maths. Even IITs are stupid. Physics, chemistry, maths determine what branch you will get. Now, whether you're doing chemical, electrical, this, that, in which IIT is determined by adding physics, chemistry, maths mark. But there's no difference between an electrical engineer, a chemical engineer, a telecom engineer, a textile engineer. So just because the system says so, you need not fight with the system, but you can at least make your route a learning route. And that is exactly what I'm trying to say. So that's what I said. The first thing, and now fortunately NEP also says that learning how to learn is important. So if you learn how to learn and get an interest in learning, so biggest thing is that Prof Mahajan also said, and many scientists have said, once you kindle the interest, In fact, Robert Frost is a very famous poet and a professor of English. He said, I'm not a teacher, I'm an awakener. If you awaken the interest, then things will move and you give all kinds of resources available for people to find out. Yes, I hope that's a good enough answer, long enough answer.
The question is
Okay.
from Pramod Mahajan, Principal Sharjah, Indian School Sharjah. Should not we allow internet and machines while learners are assessed as we are assessing? What they can apply in unknown situations and not what they memorized.
Yeah. See, again, the whole issue is about the policy makers. See, that's exactly why we call this thing paradigm shift. So, in fact, we are talking, so I taught in IIT Kanpur for 10 years, 1970s onward. We used to have open book exam. We used to set a question, to bring all your books, all your notebooks, talk to your friends, try to solve the problem. So it is a question of what attitude you have, and that's why IITians did so well. See, if we will say that the only purpose of a test is to say what is in the book without looking at the book, that the person will be able to do. And this is so interesting. I will share with you a story. So I was once given a talk at Lucknow, and I was in my flow that the only thing that they do is says that, can you write what is in the book without looking at the book? And there was a professor from Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, sitting there. And he said, you are so right. I teach a course in oral communication, but they have to give a written test for the oral communication. so this is the stupidity of the bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
And there's a professor of IIM who said this to me in a session. He said, I teach a course on oral communication because they have no way. See, at that time, sending recording, MP4 files over this was not there. Otherwise, they would have had an oral test on oral communication. But because the only test they knew was written communication, they did that. Same thing, like Pramod Mahajan is saying, when we teach internet, we will ask them to write short notes on the internet. No, why don't you ask them to use the internet to do something? So it's all a question. But my point is very simple. Government or regulator may ask you to do something, but you learn more. You learn how to use the internet to create open questions, open answers, and so on. And we always have to adjust. I will share with you a story about 20 years ago or so. So I had my office staff, and they were computer operators. But funnily, in the government ranking thing, to get promoted to something, they had to take a typing test. So this computer operator took 2 weeks leave so that she can go back and practice typing for the typing test, because the requirement for a promotion was a typing test. This will happen with the government. This will happen with many, even private sector may have these kind of things. They are inertial system. What we do is to take care of both. So where the system will change, we'll wait for it. Otherwise, we will go ahead and learn. So for example, I learned computers in the year 1967, because my professor told me when I went for my PhD that, see, just like I'm telling people now AI is coming, he told me computers are coming. And it is very true. He was a very distinguished scientist. He was Director General of CSIR and got everything, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, short of Bharat Ratna. 1967, when I started my PhD, he said, physics can wait, but you first go and learn computer programming, because computer programming is coming. And his greater modesty, foresight was, he said, I tried to learn it. I couldn't. You are young, you learn it now. And this is what I'm trying to tell the rest of the people, that you learn AI, you learn technology, you will become a better teacher, you will become a more effective person. And whether or not, see, so don't have to accept what, don't fight with the government. I'm not asking you to do that. And government gradually changes. I am very amused nowadays. I have seen 20 years ago, they were all against e-learning, all against mobile phone, all against this thing, completely banned. My friends in NCT said, no, you can't have B.Ed by distance learning. You cannot do this. My friends from IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi would say, what do you mean teaching computer through distance learning? How can this happen, etc. Now, only thing left is distance learning.
Correct.
So things change. But I think what we should do as individuals, as educators, we should take the lead, keep moving, others will follow.
Great. I think Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya from UK has a question. Sir,
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Professor Pant and everybody?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, yes.
Yeah, such a pleasure to listen to you, Professor. I hope this can continue and I can come back to your class. So my homage to all my teachers, and even ones who I gave a lot of trouble. I wish I could go back to your classes and learn a bit more. And as you very rightly pointed out, we always grew up with the notion that there was a right answer somewhere, and we have to get that right answer.
Right.
But we stepped out into real life, the first thing that you learn that there are no right answers.
Yes.
And that you have to find solutions to various problems. So that is the first lesson that you learn, which you were not prepared. You were going for that 100% you had to get in math, science, to get into institutions like IIT. The second thing was that what we were trained to be are very skill-based. You were expected to get physics, chemistry, as you said. But in real life, when you came here with changing situations, I mean, the world has changed 3 or 4 times. In my life, it must have changed so many times. Today, we are talking about artificial intelligence. And the first question that you have said is, first shape your human intelligence, then talk about artificial intelligence. So you must have heard this.
Yeah.
Like you, I was into mobile health a long time back, digital health. I used to be a person people used to throw out of the room, say, what digital health? Come coronavirus, Modi ji nahi achhe din ab aa gaye hain. Okay. That is the thing. Our education, these are the paradigm shifts, and this is from real life what we have faced. The big problem is, as you said, our very archaic educational system does not prepare you for these changes. You have to prepare yourself. We have to move away from a very skill-based to a personality-based, to a very, didactic, to a right answer to a problem solving.
Yes.
How are you proposed to change this whole culture? Because
interestingly, cultures also change quite rapidly.
Yeah.
But first, let me say that because of your area of health, Eric Topol is a champion of your cause.
Yes,
so
I know.
I first read his book called The Patient Will See You Now.
Yes.
So he's a great, in fact, he has a book called Deep Medicine, which applies deep learning to medicine.
Yes,
and
I know.
So the point is that what happens is that once people get, there is, you're a doctor, like viral spread. Once idea catches on, Richard Dawkins called it meme. So Richard Dawkins said, just like genes spread, memes spread. So once people start appreciating and people see the value of it, it spreads like wildfire. The example I give is women wearing jeans in India. You see how it spread to small towns, this, that, because it was more convenient. All the centuries of culture, etc., was reserved only for marriage ceremony or etc. But for day to day, people started adopting jeans. So similarly, people will start adopting AI when they see the advantage. And the beauty of AI is that it is coming to everybody's hand. The mobile phone itself has an AI capable chip in it. And this is the big difference that is going to happen. So Andrew Nugg had said, AI is the new electricity. But it is more than electricity because electricity reached every household. This is reaching every hand. And not every hand, every device that you will have. So and you don't have to be the AI expert. You're just going to be a person who will use that, but you will understand. So problems that we found difficult to do is this thing. And carrying this kind of a thing in terms of cultural, this thing, etc., this happens once people see the rewards of it. So initially what happens is, and maybe this is a good thing for our survival, if we did all kinds of risky behavior without care, maybe it would have been extinct. So maybe it is a survival instinct to be wary of the new until you have tested it, seen it, and so on and so forth. So I am very optimistic, and I have seen this happen. My biggest example, I say this, and especially I tease my IAS friends. I said, how did this country learn to use the mobile phone? There was no, Director General for mobile phone training, Additional Director General for iPhone training, another one for Android training, then Deputy Director General, then Mobile Training Bhavan, where you went with your Aadhaar card and you were allowed to learn mobile. We just learned it.
Yes.
And I'm saying we will learn AI also just like that. Whoever knows will share with somebody else. They will share with somebody else. They will show you how it is done. And just like we learned to use email, there was no institute for training us in email. There was no institute for training us in web usage. And today, even railway reservation, everything, everybody is doing through apps. People are using apps for that. So what will happen is, once people see the value and they will see the productivity. In my talk yesterday, I just gave them an example. There's a cream maker called Olay, O-L-A-Y. And this makes creams largely for the elderly women in their 30s and 40s. They use AI by saying, you take a selfie, send me the selfie, I will analyze your skin condition, etc., just like you analyze X-rays and MRIs and so on, and tell you what cream to use and send you that cream back. In 1 year, they increase their revenue by 100%. Because so many women who would not go to a professional beauty parlor, for various reasons, it's not available all over. And even if it is there, maybe your mother-in-law is there, you don't want to go, could directly go and get this. Directly getting to the consumer and taking care of his or her needs in innovative ways. You're wearing a very nice shirt. Brooks Brothers is a very famous company which makes shirts. At headquarters in New York, also has offices in London, has airports all over. The big challenge was, what kind of shirt do I stock in a particular store? What size, what color, what fabric, and so on. AI has come to the use. They have now recommended a system. At this store, you send this. At this store, you send this. At this store, you send this. So as more and more smaller business people will feel this. So my immediate thought was that all those sari shops should start using AI to decide what my customer is going to like. So just like Amazon gives you a recommendation or Netflix gives you a recommendation, the sari seller, as soon as you enter, madam, this is the sari for you. And they will increase. So,
this is...
Yeah. So, yeah,
this is the thing. The only question, that follow-on question I will have very quickly, sorry Pranav, I've taken some of your time, is fantastic. AI is fantastic, but it is good for us because we've gone through the traditional system. We know what human interaction, the analog system. But what about the next generation? Okay. Ultimately, all what we're talking about is edge-to-edge, human-to-human interactions.
Yeah.
How are we going to train the next generation to understand edge-to-edge and the value of AI? AI cannot replace
No. You are
AI. So that is the thing.
So you are absolutely spot on. See, what happened, we wasted our lives learning what machines can do better than us.
Yes.
Correct.
We will now have our children's life understanding what humans can do better than machines.
Yes.
And this has been said by Joseph Aoun. Joseph Aoun is president of Northeastern University in USA. He has written a book called A Roboproof Education. And there he has said that just like there is robotics of how robots behave, there is humanics about how humans behave.
Yes.
And this is what we will try. So I say this very often. I say I was a good student. So what did you teach me? How do electrons behave? How do protons behave? How does electron behave in electric? How am I going to meet a Mr. Electron? How are you doing? I meet humans all the time. You did not teach me psychology. You did not teach me sociology. You did not an anthropology. You did not teach me communication. So this is what we will teach people. We will teach them, and also meaning and purpose of life. The biggest problem today is, and we saw Sushant Singh Rajput as one case, but there are many people who have no idea what they're living for.
Absolutely.
So meaning and purpose of life, which comes from philosophy. So you then need to understand. You need to understand this, and instead of narrow focus on 3 subjects and getting that marks, you understand a large variety of subjects. You study literature, you do existentialism, you know what is Kafkaesque, you know what Nietzsche said, and so on and so forth. And today our own philosophy. To me, our Yakshi Prashna episode in Mahabharata is a complete philosophy. So the point is, because there it says, Kim Ashcharyam, and what is the big wonder? Is that people see everybody die, but they think they won't die. So the idea that we said, forget all this, just get physics, chemistry, maths, become an engineer, become an MBA, get a good job in a corporate. But once you've done that, the rest of life appears to you glaringly there, and you have not prepared yourself. And in fact, one of my favorite topics is the Faustian bargain. that you end up doing this because, like Dr. Foster's, you wanted all this, but you gave up your soul in exchange for it. So the idea is that we will have a lot more to learn, things which we ignored, things which we did not look at because of the urgency of getting this job. The final thing is that because of increasing longevity, we again need a love for learning and curiosity.
Absolutely.
Because I tell people, I have senior colleagues who worked with me at IIT Kanpur. They have enjoyed pension for more years than they enjoyed salary. So they did their PhD. See, they did their PhD, went abroad, etc., came back, joined IIT as a faculty at the age of 40. They retired at 60. They're now 85 and going strong. So you have to tell people, what do you do in your second half of life? In fact, Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, in his stages of life, he says, where is the school for the second half of life? And that's another very important thing. And he says a lot of basic problems come because you want to lead the second half of life on the same principles that you led the first half of life. The first half of life is childhood to youth to adjusting to society. The second half of life is engaging with society and being ready to depart. And if you are not going to do that in a proper way, you'll have again psychological problems of various kinds. So it's very interesting. Life is full of many.
And I think we should thank Pranav because he has now given us a platform which is almost like a school to learn about what to do in the next
half of second half of life. You can actually learn.
And Professor Pant is encyclopedia within himself. This
How much I learned today, how much I learned today, I probably have not learned so many years of school and university, I mean, amazing.
The
He's
best
a versatile person.
the best part with him is, whenever I'm in any kind of problem, or a business, or whatever, even personal, I just give a call to Professor Pant. And he gives a very tried, tested, and with a case study also. Yes, welcome, Geeta ma'am. How are you?
Good. Joined a little late, but I have grown from young to old hearing Mr. Pant, and I never want to miss a chance. I had a meeting, so immediately after the meeting, I joined. And two things that I'm going to do after listening to you, sir.
Yes.
AI CBSE has given us that you start this as a subject, but I'm going to start a subject in my school which would be named Purpose of Life.
Very good.
And we'll make a curriculum for that. So thank you, sir.
Yes. No. In fact, not only that. In the UK, there is already for a long time philosophy for children. So they have a course like that, philosophy for children, and I think this purpose of life is very important. Most crucial.
Absolutely. And if they have a focus on this, then a whole lot of other things become less important.
Yes,
like
yes.
The 200% focus on getting into a good career or JEE or NEET, all that becomes a little less important.
Right.
If you have something like a purpose in life and your calling and because you see, we do tell kids that you are unique. There's nobody, there's nobody else like Geeta Vashne, I know. So everyone is unique. So you have to find out what you have come here for and what satisfies you. But it has to start early in life. I'm so glad that you mentioned it, that this has to start early in life.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no point start reading Gita at 45 years of age.
Correct.
You have to do during school time so that you follow that, as your dharma. So thank you, sir. Thank you for, such great thoughts.
Sangeeta Thameja, Principal Millennium School, and Ms. Geeta Marshne is the Director of Chiriram Schools, Noida. She has headed Delhi Public Schools, Pakistan Public Schools. She's a veteran. She also helps us a lot. So I'd like to thank everyone. On Teachers Day, one thing, not all handsome men and beautiful women become actor or actresses. Some of them become teachers also.
Oh yes, teachers are very, very beautiful people, in and out.
Yes, right.
Thanks everyone, ma'am.